The Galactic Conclave had never seen a union quite like theirs. Princess Valith of the Zyrenthian Star Empire, third daughter of High Sovereign Merrick, bearer of the Silver Mantle, beloved of 12 star systems, had chosen a human. Not a warlord. Not an admiral. Not even a diplomat of significant rank. She had chosen Ethan Cross. A linguist. The court whispered about it for months. Zyrenthian nobles pressed their silver-tipped fingers together and murmured behind crystalline fans. A human? They said. Those short-lived creatures? Those soft, fragile things that bleed so easily and sleep through a third of their lives? Valith had heard every word. She simply did not care. She had met Ethan at the Third Meridian Peace Summit, where he had been translating for a minor Earth delegation. While generals argued territorial borders, he had quietly corrected a mistranslation that would have triggered a war, then gone back to his tea as though nothing had happened. She had been watching him for 3 hours before she realized her own heart had changed. Now, 2 years into their marriage, Valith knew her husband as few in the galaxy knew a human. She knew the gentleness of his hands when he tended to the small earth garden he kept in their palace quarters, coaxing tomatoes from alien soil with a patience that baffled her entirely. She knew the warmth of his laugh, low and unhurried. She knew how he stayed up reading when he could not sleep, and how he always kept one light burning for her when she returned from late council sessions. He was, she had concluded, the kindest creature in the known universe. She had told her general, Sorthek, as much. Sorthek, who had 14 battle scars and eyes like hammered iron, had looked at her with something unreadable on his face. Princess, he had said carefully, you have never seen him angry. She had laughed. Ethan? Angry? She shook her head. He once spent 40 minutes coaxing a spider out of our bedroom rather than harm it. Sorthek had not laughed. He had only said, humans are calm water, my lady. Until they are not. She had dismissed the warning. She should not have. It began with the Keth Collective. The Keth were pirates by heritage and empire by ambition, a species of 7-limbed predators who had carved territory along the outer meridian through violence and terror. They had been a manageable nuisance for decades. Border raids. Stolen cargo. The occasional diplomatic insult. Then they took the Solara. The Solara was a civilian transport Zyrenthian registry, carrying scholars, merchants, and 300 colonists bound for the new settlement on Vane's 4th moon. It was not a warship. It carried no weapons. It flew under the silver and gold of the Conclave's protected lanes. The Keth boarded it anyway. They took the cargo, took the fuel cells, and, because their commander, Warlord Dresh, was known to enjoy cruelty, broadcast the whole thing across the open conclave frequency. Valith was in the War Council chamber when the transmission came through. She watched Dresh's snarling face fill the holographic display, his 7 limbs spread wide in what the Keth considered triumphant display. Tell your conclave, Dresh said, in mangled galactic common, that the outer meridian belongs to the Keth now. Your lanes are our lanes. Your ships are our ships. Come collect your people, if you can find them. The council erupted. Generals shouted. Advisors scrambled. Maps of the outer meridian blazed across every screen. Valith said nothing. She was watching her husband. Ethan Cross stood at the edge of the room, tablet in hand, where he had been quietly cataloging a new Zyrenthian dialect with one of the scholars. He had been utterly uninvolved in the politics of the morning. He was watching the transmission. His face had gone very still. Not the stillness of shock. Not the stillness of fear. Something older and much quieter. Valith had seen a frozen lake once, on a Zyrenthian winter world, vast and silent and carrying unimaginable depth beneath its surface. That was what she saw in her husband's face now. He set down his tablet. Very carefully. Very precisely. Ethan, she began. Where are they holding the Solara? he asked. His voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. We don't know yet. Then we find out. He crossed to the tactical display. The generals parted for him without quite meaning to, the way water parts around stone. Pull the Keth movement patterns from the last 6 months. Cross-reference against their known fueling depots in the outer sectors. Their ships burn dark matter, they need to stop every 4 days. His finger moved across the map. Here. Or here. General Sortek was staring at him. How do you know Keth fuel cycles? I translated the report on Keth physiology and ship engineering 2 years ago, Ethan said, without looking up. Nobody reads the linguistic archive. They should. He tapped a sector near the Keth border. They're here. They'll think they're safe. The conclave hasn't struck outside the meridian in 60 years. Because it would risk a wider conflict, an advisor said sharply. The Keth have allies? Ethan finally looked up. Valeth would spend a long time afterward trying to describe what she saw in his eyes. It was not rage, exactly. It was not even fury. It was something much more dangerous, the absolute, crystalline certainty of a human who had made a decision and was now simply executing it. They broadcast it, Ethan said quietly. On an open frequency. To the entire conclave. He paused. They weren't declaring war. They were performing. They wanted the audience. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. So we give them one. What followed, the history texts would call the Meridian Reckoning. Valeth called it the week she finally understood her husband. Ethan did not command the fleet. He was not a soldier. He sat at a communications console for 6 days, running on 3 hours of sleep and black earth coffee that smelled, to Zyrenthian noses, like burning ambition. He drafted the diplomatic messaging, not threats, but precision instruments. He contacted every species the Keth had raided in the last decade. Old grievances, forgotten because no one had thought to gather them into a single voice. He gathered them. When Admiral Viren led the Conclave strike force into Keth space, she went with 47 allied ships behind her, species who had never agreed on anything before, united by a human linguist who had spent 6 days speaking each of their languages, finding each of their wounds, and quietly explaining that now was the time. Warlord Dresh surrendered before a single shot was fired. He had been prepared for a battle. He had not been prepared to find the entire outer meridian standing against him at once. Afterward, aboard the flagship, Admiral Viren found Ethan asleep at his console, finally, fully unconscious, head resting on his arms, empty coffee cup beside him. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she covered him with her officer's cloak and left him to sleep. Valeth was waiting when he woke. He blinked at her, momentarily confused, still half in whatever dreams humans kept. Then awareness settled back into his face, and with it, the gentleness she knew. Her husband again, soft-eyed, a little rumpled, already reaching for a water flask. The Solara, he asked. Safe. All passengers recovered. She paused. You did that. He shook his head. I just talked to people. Ethan. She looked at him very carefully. Sortek told me, once, that I had never seen you angry. I think he was wrong. She tilted her head. I think I just saw it. And I think it is the most frightening thing in the galaxy. He was quiet for a moment. I wasn't angry, he said at last. Then what were you? He thought about it, that slow, honest way he had of thinking, that she had loved from the beginning. Decided, he said. Valeth understood, then, what Sortek had tried to tell her. Humans were not dangerous because they raged. Anyone could rage. Any beast, any soldier, any wounded creature could rage. Humans were dangerous because they were patient. Because they were kind, right up until kindness was no longer the correct tool, and then they reached into themselves and found something else entirely. Something ancient and implacable, honed by thousands of years of survival on a world that had tried, repeatedly, to kill them. Something that built coalitions in 6 days and dismantled empires without firing a shot. She reached out and took his hand. He laced his fingers through hers, easy and familiar. "Come home," she said. "Your tomatoes need watering." He smiled. The gentleness was back, like it had never left. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe that was the most terrifying thing of all. In the years that followed, the Keth collective restructured under conclave oversight. Warlord Dresh, when asked by a historian what had broken his resolve, was silent for a long time. "The human," he said at last. He never raised his voice. He never made a threat. He just talked. To everyone. And they all listened. He paused. "I have faced armies. I have faced weapons that burn stars. I have never been so afraid as I was in that moment, watching a single human sit at a console and quietly take apart everything I had built." The historian asked, "What did you think he was?" Dresh's many eyes moved slowly. "Patient," he said. "He was patient. And that is worse than any weapon I know."